Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm just going to give a few moments for our attendees to filter in, and then we will get started. All right, I'm going to start us off. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the SFU Master of Publishing Open House. I'm Hannah McGregor. I'm the director of the publishing program at SFU. I'm going to be sort of running the show today and introducing some other folks as we go along. But before we get started, I want to recognize that SFU and the publishing program are located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and that recognizing that we are guests on this territory, that as a program and as individuals, we are guests on this territory, is really central to what we do here in the publishing program and to the way that we try to be good guests here. So we are going to, I'm going to give you a little outline of what we're going to be covering today. So I'm going to begin by giving you a short overview of the Master of Publishing program. Then I will introduce you to the faculty in the program who will tell you a little bit about themselves and about the courses that they teach. Hopefully at some point my left shoulder will stop disappearing. Then we are going to meet a couple of alumni from the Master of Publishing, and they're going to tell you about their experiences in the program and then in their careers following. Then we're going to hear a little bit more from our industry liaison about career opportunities. And finally, we will open things up for a Q&A. We have subtitles enabled, so you should be able to turn those on at the bottom of your screen. You should also be able to see a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Please do feel free to go ahead and add questions in there as they occur to you. We'll answer all of the questions at the end, or as many as we could manage, but don't feel that you have to wait until the Q&A session to put questions in there. Feel free to go ahead and add them in as they occur to you. So, the Master of Publishing program. The Master of Publishing is a really unique program. It's the only graduate program in publishing in Canada, and it is a combination of an academic program and practical training in the skills that you need to work in the publishing industry. So that means that it has the scholarly rigor of a master's degree, as well as lots of opportunities to get practical and hands-on experience. It's a 4-term program. So it begins in September. There's a fall term, a spring term, no winter term because we don't have winter in Vancouver, then a summer term and one more fall term, and then you're done. However, because there's coursework only in the first 2 semesters, you only have to be resident in Vancouver in those first 2 semesters. So the way that it works is you spend your first 2 semesters doing coursework here in Vancouver. That's where I am located. You take 9 courses during those 2 semesters, so it's full-time coursework. Then you spend your 3rd semester doing a professional placement and your 4th semester writing a 10,000-word project report based on the work that you did during your professional placement, as well as, of course, what you learned during your actual coursework. A short outline of the coursework that you do in the Master of Publishing program. It begins with you do 3 seminar courses, so 3 scholarly courses that introduce you to a lot of the theory behind how publishing works, as well as the history of publishing. You do 3 practice-based courses in management and editing and design skills, and then you do 3 collaborative project-based courses where you actually get to go through the process of publishing. And then, of course, Following that, you work with our industry liaison to secure a professional placement in some aspect of the publishing industry that is relevant to your particular career interests. Now, because of the way that the program works, it's a slightly unusual fee structure. I'm happy to answer more specific questions about the fee structure if folks have questions about that. What I want to highlight is that the first 2 semesters do have a higher tuition because those are your on-the-ground course semesters where you're spending a lot of time with the faculty, and then the professional placement and project report semesters, the tuition is significantly lower. And of course, you are not required to be in Vancouver at that time. The other thing to note is that tuition is the same, fees are the same for international and domestic students. So there isn't a increased tuition cost for international students. We also have multiple forms of financial aid available. I'm happy to speak further to those as well if folks have questions. The key thing to know there is that we've got lots of entrance scholarships available, and those entrance scholarships are given out based on the quality of applications. So you do not need to do anything in addition to the standard application to the program to qualify for entrance scholarships. The key is to put together the strongest possible application that you can. Now, I will talk a little bit more later on about what makes a strong application and how to put one together. But rather than continuing to stare at me, I think it might be nice to meet some of our other faculty. And so I'm going to invite other members of the faculty to join me on screen one by one, and they will introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about what they do. And I'm going to start with Juan Pablo Alperin.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully my internet will be cooperating. It's great to get a chance to talk to you and introduce myself. So I'm Juan Pablo Alperin. I'm an associate professor in the program. I'm also a co-scientific director of an initiative at SFU called the Public Knowledge Project. In the Masters of Publishing program, I lead the technology seminar. It's one of those more academic courses that Hannah was just mentioning. It's where in the course we end up looking at the technology sector, looking at how content industries intersect with that sector. So it's a course that sort of talks not specifically about the technology of the publishing industry, but rather the technologies that are in our lives and how the creation of content and all of the way in which we consume content is interfacing with those aspects of our lives. So it's a little bit of a science and technology and society course, a little bit of a content industry course, and a little bit of a publishing course, and talking really about the ideas. I always like to also remind the students that come in, often people don't have much of a technology background when they come into the program, and to say that this is a course that does not require you to be super proficient in any technology. We're really going to be talking about the role that technology has in our lives and how it shapes all content industries. And so all of the experience that you need with technology to be able to succeed in the course is to be a person that uses technologies and interfaces with the web on your regular everyday lives, and then to just come equipped to be able to think about those, what that means and how that affects both the industry and the society around us. I think that's probably it for me, Hannah. I'll let you pass on to the next person. But yeah, really a pleasure, and look forward to seeing your applications.
That's perfect. Thanks so much, Juan. I'm going to ask Scott Steedman to tell us a little bit about himself next.
All right. Hi there. Nice to meet you. I'm Scott. I am a senior lecturer. I teach Pub 601, which we call the editing course. It's actually fully called Editing in Theory and Practice. And I also teach 605, the book project. I am an editor by trade. I'm not an academic, but I worked for more than 30 years in a whole variety of publishers. First of all, in the UK, where I worked for 8 years. Then in France for 8 years, for 6 years rather, where I worked for Gallimard and Larousse, among other publishers. And since then, back here in Canada, where I worked for Raincoast, where I was editorial director, Douglas and McIntyre, and I'm now a freelance editor. I also do have an active practice writing. So I do a whole variety of different things in the publishing world. At SFU, the courses I teach, first of all, 601, which is a course, an introduction to the whole editing process. We begin with the whole, like, where books come from, how books are acquired, and then go all the way through structural editing, stylistic editing, copy editing, and finally proofreading. So that whole editorial process. Partway through that, we start what's considered sort of the flagship course in the fall program anyway, the book project 605. And in that course, you are split up into groups. It's a practical group project, and you're given a mandate. You are making something up. You're going to make up a new imprint of an existing Canadian independent publisher. And then you have 7 weeks to do this from scratch. So you make up books, you make up your roles within the company, then you create a catalog, you design the covers for the books, you write the cover copy, you do a catalog, you do marketing plans, you do profit and loss statements for these books. And finally, after 7 weeks, you have this incredible, what looks like a catalog for a real publisher. And we have a mock sales conference where in front of real people, because you're going to be taught every week by actual industry professionals, you will then get up and present your books like a real editor would, as if it was a list for a real publishing company. It's kind of intense. We're in the middle of it right now. This is week 5. And most MPubbers will tell you it's kind of the most exhausting, full-on, and rewarding thing that they do in MPub. But then I would say that, wouldn't I? Back to you, Hannah.
Yeah, you would say that. But I think a lot of the MPubs would also say that. So next up, I'm going to ask Mauve Pagé to join us on screen. Hi, Mauve.
Hello. I laughed out loud at that, Scott. Hi, everybody. My name is Mauve Pagé. I am also a senior lecturer here, and I'm also, similarly to Scott, one of the professionals, so not from an academic background. I teach the design and production control in publishing, or Pub 602. Before I was teaching here, I was a full-time book designer. I have about 18 years of experience in publication design. My focus has been mostly print books, so cookbooks and kids' books and some scholarly books. I worked with tiny local publishers, like a 2-person press, to small and mid-sized publishers like UBC Press, Oxford, Douglas and McIntyre, Whitecap Books, and also really large publishers like Penguin Random House. And I have both experience as a freelancer and as an in-house designer. For my class, design and production control in publishing, what you can kind of expect is that it's your one and only design course in the program, and it lasts the entire year. Most of them are semester, but this one is just, you'll see me the entire year. There's a fair amount of design work that also happens in the project courses, like the book project or media project. And I'm here to assist students in their task of designing for those classes as well. In my specific class, we cover principle of design and the creative process. We talk a lot about typography, things like expressive type, but also the tiny little details of typography, which I find that people that love proofreading tend to be really good at doing and enjoy that part. We look at print books and magazine structures, and we also tackle things like user experience for digital platforms, branding, marketing, pre-press production. And then the type of work that you do specifically in my class is designing projects that you propose, develop, and create a final mock-up, a final print version of it. And that can range from book covers and illustrated books and layouts. You end up doing a short presentation and participating in design critiques. Not everybody necessarily comes to the program to do design work, and that's completely fine. I'm not just there to teach basics design skills, but also make it accessible. So if you aren't a designer, you might end up doing some design work, and then you'll have those skills. It looks good on your resume. And because I know there's varying levels of skills, then I try to, learn what your own learning objectives are and work with you in the class. And that's about it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mauve. I'm going to tell you just briefly a little bit about some of the folks who are not joining us today. Leanne Johnson is another one of our senior lecturers in the program, and Leanne teaches our management course as well as our media publishing course, which gives you a chance, basically similar to the book project course that Scott was talking about, lets you go through a collaborative hands-on publishing experience beginning to end. But rather than book publishing, you're basically coming up with a media startup of sorts. So maybe a podcast, maybe an online magazine, maybe a book box subscription service. It's an opportunity to really play around with the new and innovative forms that publishing is increasingly taking, and to think about some outside the box approaches to designing that kind of publishing project, actually making it work, funding it, etc. I also myself teach generally Pub 800, which is texts and contexts. That's like our grounding academic seminar that really introduces you to major theories and ideas behind publishing in general. We talk about ideas like curation and value and copyright. We talk about where those ideas came from and how they actually play out in the industry today. Sometimes I also teach Pub 801, which is the history of publishing, which gives you a much more broad and historical perspective on the publishing industry, but also tends to be pretty fun because we get to get hands-on with some really cool historical objects. We have a few other faculty members who haven't joined us today, but because they're not here, I'm just going to leave them out, and you'll find out more from them when you come to the program. But I do want to take a moment to also have Suzanne Norman come on screen and introduce herself.
Hi, like Hannah said, I'm Suzanne Norman. I don't actually teach in the academic portion of the MPub, but I do work with students very closely on their placements. I'm the industry supervisor for publishing in Canada and globally, really. It depends on your interests and where you end up wanting to do your placement. We also refer to it as an internship, but within the industry in Canada, they know it as a professional placement because it differs from an internship in a couple of ways. Hannah mentioned you have to write a project report based on your experience. That's different than a typical internship. And there are a couple of other minor differences. Your course will be called an internship, but it is a professional placement. I also run a few professional seminars throughout the course of the 2 semesters you're here. And those cover topics like building a CV, interviewing skills, professional relationships, building networks, those sorts of things that should help you as you go into your placement. And then as you start looking for a job and wanting to get into different parts of the industry. I'll go through some of the typical placements and some of the interesting places our MPub grads end up. So we'll do that towards the end of the session. Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you, Suzanne. Speaking of the interesting places that our MPub alums end up, we have a couple of alumni here to tell us a little bit about their experiences in the program and about the careers that followed. So first up, we're going to hear a little bit from Annie.
Hello, is my video
Hi. Perfect.
All right, hello. Yes, I'm Annie Slizack. I did the MPub in 2017-18, I believe. So I finished after 4 semesters in the winter of 2018. Yeah, I guess I want to make sure my current occupation. I'm a Legistic Revisor for the Department of Justice Canada. I'm an editor, I guess, at the end of it. My placement for the program was with the Government of Canada at the Department of Heritage, where I worked with the Canada Book Fund, which is the branch of the government that gives funding to book publishers. So I did my 4-month internship with the government there while I was working on my project report. Then I did a second student term with the government while I was working on the project while I was working for the book fund. Then when I went to my second student term, I was working on my report for that project. The second team was the Frankfurt Book Fair team. For anyone who doesn't know, there's a massive trade book fair in Frankfurt every year. In 2020/2021, Canada was the guest of honor country. So the government of Canada put together a team to prepare the cultural programming for that year. It was canceled in 2020, so we were able to move to 2021. Anyway, so I did kind of 2 student terms there. That was my last 2 semesters of the MPub, and it was paid. I was, paid by my employer, the government, and I got to work on a cool project for the Canada Book Fund, which was helping to design a funding program that helped put money in towards making accessible publishing in Canada. So that was really cool. We ended up winning an accessibility award for that. In my second term as a student, I was writing up my report, which helped me graduate the program. After I did that, I kind of decided I do want to work for the government, and so I kind of tried to get a permanent position wherever I could. I ended up somewhere else where I wasn't able to really flex my editing muscles, but I moved around or tried to move up back into editing, and now here I am. I edit legislature, which is not where I thought I'd end up when I started the program. I did want to do editing when I started, so I decided to take the master's, even though I was kind of only interested in editing. It gave me a huge breadth of knowledge about a whole bunch of stuff, and it's all been super useful and relevant. I was working in the government because of my understanding of the book publishing industry, and helping assess funding applications and things like that. So that I wasn't doing editing there, but I was working in the context of the book publishing industry. Same thing with the Frankfurt Book Fair team. Now I'm back doing editing, so it's kind of come full circle, I guess. But I guess the program is kind of designed around the publishing industry in Canada, but there's so many more applications. You don't just have to work for a publishing house if you don't want to do that. You can try doing your placement in Ottawa, Ontario, where you have never been before, and decide to come back after 4 months, or decide to stay for 5 more years. It opened a lot of doors for me that I didn't even know were available to begin with. So it is a really fun program. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about the courses or anything, but had a lot of fun, and the professors were great.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yes.
Do you have any advice for potential applicants?
Oh. My advice would be, I don't know, like I said, that there's more options than maybe are, immediately available on the surface. So don't when I said, I went in thinking I'm going to do editing, and after this I'm going to go work for a publishing house or just do freelance editing or something. But I kind of broadened my horizons and was open to being, like I said, I'm just going to go wherever my placement is for 4 months, and then whatever, I'll go back to editing after that. And it opened something else up for me. And so I kind of tried to be open to trying new things. And I know Mauve said, not everybody uses their design skills after, I still use my design skills. So, I'm not working as a designer, but I do little things on the side. So just my advice is be open and accept all the learning that you can get from the program.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I also wish I knew how to use InDesign, but Mauve refuses to teach me. I'm kidding. Thank you so much, Annie. We'll get you back on screen during the Q&A, but for now, Leena, would you like to join us and tell us a little bit about your experience in the MPub and your work?
Oh yeah, hi Hannah, and hi everyone who is online. I hope I am audible. There are no issues with my, oh great. So I was actually Annie's classmate, and we did the publishing program together in 2017-2018. I was an international student. My hometown is Mumbai, India. So I came to SFU wanting to know more about book publishing. I have a background in magazine publishing. I started my career as working in a custom publishing house, working on a travel magazine for an airline. So it was basically an in-flight travel magazine. After that, I worked, I got I got really fortunate and I got to work with Architectural Digest with Condé Nast India. That was a wonderful experience. And I was really interested in knowing more about the publishing industry, specifically book publishing, which is really quite different from magazine publishing. And I applied to SFU, and I was really lucky to be chosen as one of the people to study in this wonderful program. It's a very intense program. There are a lot of group projects, but there's also, I always felt really supported. It's a wonderful community that the MPub program has created, where you feel like you're part of a community of people who always are there to advise you. I got to know a lot about the Canadian publishing industry, which I was not very familiar with. So stuff like, like the small publishers and the medium-sized publishers, the big publishers. And I did a lot of my homework as well. So when it came time to placement, when I went to Suzanne with a whole sort of a laundry list of publishers who were like, I would have loved to work with. And I got really fortunate that my placement was with Simon & Schuster Canada in Toronto. And I spent 3 months at Simon & Schuster as an editorial, with an editorial professional placement. And one of my classmates also got her internship at Simon & Schuster, but she did a marketing placement, and I did the editorial one. It was an absolutely fantastic experience, like seeing how an actual sort of publishing house works, got to know lots of like the ins and outs of, just regular, how regular publishing happens. After my 3-month internship, I came back to Vancouver. I did 2 teaching assistantships and 1 research assistantship. And I continued to, work on my project. And also, I also helped some international students applying for the MPub program, guiding them with stuff like, oh, how do you find a place in Vancouver and stuff like that? And how do you apply for a student visa and so on and so forth? And it has been a wonderful experience. I love MPub. I love the faculty over there, and have had a wonderful experience. I now work as a senior education and development coordinator with the Vancouver Writers Fest. So the Vancouver Writers Fest is 36-year-old organization, and we run one of the biggest literary festivals in Canada on the West Coast, here in Vancouver on Granville Island. And it's a wonderful organization, and I've been with them for over 4 years now. So what I basically do is I run educational programs. So I take authors to schools. I run writing contests, I run writing workshops. And besides that, I also do a lot of development work. So that means I apply for grants. So in fact, I'm sure many of the grants I apply for, Annie is the one who has probably, it has come across her desk, I don't know. So I write grants, and I also handle basically dealing with members, donors, and community organizations, partnerships, and stuff like that. So it's a mixed bag of like education and development. And it has been wonderful so far. And I think that's it. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Leena. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Annie. Do you have any tips or advice for folks who are thinking of applying to the program?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, allow yourself to be a sponge. I mean, just absorb information. And so, one of the things that you mentioned was the project report that we have to do at the end of basically to graduate out of the publishing program. And it is always, how do you come up with the idea of the project report? What do you base it on? So while I was working at Simon & Schuster, I was the idea for the project report came from a stray sort of like just we were at a publishers meeting, and they just one of the like the head of Passam and Schuster Canada, he was just talking about the book formats, like the hardcover versus the paperback versus the trade paperback. And I was like, this is really interesting. They are spending a lot of time talking about paper formats, and that must be a big deal. And so I think you have to be sort of open to receiving ideas and to learning about Canadian publishing. I think because you never know where it will help you in the future. And yeah, I would say that would be my advice. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Leena.
Thank you.
Now, since we are already on the topic of professional placements, I am going to ask Suzanne to come back on screen and tell us a little bit more about career opportunities through the Master of Publishing.
Yeah, thank you. That is one of the biggest questions we get. How am I going to get a job? Where am I going to get a job? What is this professional placement you speak of, and how will it help me? I was just listening to Leena and Annie talk about be open and be a sponge. I think that's a super important point, because when we go into, I did the MPub as well many years ago. But when we go in, we tend to think we have an area that, okay, we're just going to be an editor. We're going to, go on and do that. Think more broadly and think about all the different places that you might have an interest in that may not have been your first choice, but just, I guess, keeping an open mind. And I will work with you to try and get you into whatever placement you want to do. I will tell you a little bit about some of the areas, some of the places people go. We've had people go to the National Film Board and video and digital media kind of places. We've had university presses be involved, University of Chicago. If you are an editor at all, the Chicago Manual of Style is like a Bible for editors. And so the person who went there, Kate, had a grand time at that press. We've got lots of magazine work, as much as magazines are still happening in different formats of magazines and multiple media formats of magazine type long form journalism. We also have people in journalism who have placed at the Globe and Mail and the Winnipeg Free Press. Lots of associations. The Indigenous Editors Association has worked with us. We do have funding bodies within the university or peripherally to the university, one being MyTax, and they will help fund collaborative projects with other universities like University of Portland, University of Sydney in Australia. They'll also fund things with the Writers Fest, with the Indigenous Editors Association. So we have a lot of these options where you can do research / project reports / placements. Lots of different mashups we can work on. Policy programs such as Annie went through, the policy branch, the Canada Book Fund, Canada Council, the Ontario Arts Council. So all over the map, and we're constantly looking for new places. Our most recent discussions have been with the Internet Archive and Brewster Kale on the work that he's doing. So if there's something you like, then it's not out of range. I mean, publishing is everywhere, and publishing is involved in pretty much any industry. So we can always find a way in, or at least give it a good shot. I think that's all I had to say. And I noticed there was a few questions on placements, and we'll get to those in the Q&A.
We sure will. You know what's hilarious, Suzanne, is you didn't even mention book publishers, but we do place a lot of our students there too.
Oh dear God, I'm so conscious of like being expansive,
like all
right?
of these expansive, exciting opportunities, but also book publishers. Those two.
And that is my area of love. Yes, all the book publishers in Canada, and and I should say source books in the States. So with innovative publishers as well, and it's all.
Yeah, it's hard at this point to find anywhere in the publishing sector broadly conceived that doesn't have some connection to MPub alumni. So the last thing that I'm going to go over really briefly is the application process. So when you apply for a Master of Publishing, the process that you go through involves applying at the university level and applying for the specific program. So the university has its requirements, and then the program itself has its requirements. So at the university level, there's a couple of things that you'll need. One of those is transcripts, of course, from your previous degree. You do have to have an undergraduate degree to take the master's. That's pretty standard. You also, if English is not your first language, you will have to demonstrate English proficiency, generally via test scores for some of the standardized testing. In addition to that, as a program, we ask you to provide 3 references. Generally, we look for a mix of academic references from your previous educational experience and professional references from publishing experience that you have. And the mix of those will really depend on where you're at in your career and how long ago you did your last degree. Some folks are coming straight out of their undergraduate. Other folks have been working for 20 years and are retraining in a new industry. So we get lots of different kinds of references for sure. We then also ask you to submit a 2 to 3 page statement of aims and objectives. That's where you tell us about you and about what excites you about publishing and what kinds of passions you are bringing with you into the program. We also ask you to attach a portfolio so that you can highlight those skills and passions. And that portfolio gives you a chance to really show us, like, I do design, that's what I'm passionate about, here's my design work, or I'm really interested in talking and thinking about technology and culture, so here's an essay that I wrote about technology and culture. The portfolio is really a place where you can play and really show us who you are. And then in addition to that, we ask you to give us a statement about either how you have acquired the skills we ask you to have, or how you plan to acquire the skills we ask you to have. So coming into the Master of Publishing, we ask students to have some basic skills in accounting, marketing, editing, professional publishing software, particularly the Adobe suite, and collaboration and teamwork. We recognize that not every applicant is going to have 100% of those skills already. So there is also an opportunity in that section to say, for example, I don't yet have a background in marketing, but here's my plan to, read a really essential text on the topic or take an online course on the topic prior to beginning the program. So it's totally standard for students to sort of come in with greater strengths in some areas than others. The other thing that I want to note is that if you are currently considering applying for the program and you would like to live in residence, it's actually a really great idea to apply for a spot in residence now. You do not have to wait until you've been accepted into the program to apply for a spot in residence. There's graduate residence housing in downtown Vancouver as a campus. We are located right in downtown Vancouver in the Harbor Center building. So there's residents quite close by, but those spots do fill up. So you can apply now at sfu.ca/students/residences. I can also share that link in the chat. But it is a good idea, if that is a thing that you are considering, to go ahead and apply now, just so you can make sure you've got your application in. So at this point, I'm going to ask all of the folks, all of the panelists here to come back on screen. Look at us, a big happy family. And we're gonna answer some questions.
I'll start with a couple of professional placement ones because they came early on the Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was, our professional placements generally paid, or are they not? They are generally paid, and we insist that they're paid, but ultimately it's up to the student if they want to take an unpaid placement. generally speaking, more and more companies are doing paid placements and trying to reach at least a living wage in what they're paying. The other question was, do students have trouble finding placements, and are they available throughout the country? They're available all over the place. Yes, in Montreal, as you asked. Drawn and Quarterly has taken placements. They're located in Montreal. We've had people at the Icelandic Writers Retreat in Newfoundland, at Breakwater Books, and now in Italy doing agenting work. So all over the place. Think big, and we'll try and work with, we'll work with you to try and make the placement work.
Fabulous. I see another question here about entrance scholarships. How much are the entrance scholarships worth, and how many are available? Those are both quite tricky questions to ask, because the amount of funding that we get for entrance scholarships in part depends on how many students are actually in the program. However, we have funding of, I believe our highest entrance scholarship, correct me if I'm wrong, is $10,000. That's sort of our top tier entrance scholarship. We have one of those available, but we also have graduate fellowships, which are worth $7,000, and we tend to have a number of those available. And then there are named awards that are generally given out in the second semester, that are funded by different publishers or different sectors in the publishing industry, and those are given out once students are in the program. We try to give out entrance scholarships as generously as we can. And at the same time, we also try to hold back some of that funding, because sometimes students come into the program with scores from their undergraduate that does not qualify them for funding, but then do very, very well in the MPub itself. And so we hold back some of our money so that if you do come in and you don't yet qualify for funding, but do well, we can then reward you with funding in the second semester of the program. So even if you don't end up qualifying for an entrance scholarship, there's further opportunities for funding that come up. Would anybody else like to, Mauve, I'm going to ask you to tackle this one. Do applicants who do not have experience in all the required areas, such as accounting, still have a good chance of being accepted to the program?
Yes, that's the quick answer. I mean, I'm not the one responsible for looking at accounting, but I can talk from the design point of view, absolutely. And I would say most of the people do not have design background, and that is okay. And I see Scott nodding his head. And so one of the recommendations that I have, and that's also on the website, is to take, for example, a LinkedIn Learning, and it's like a couple of hours and you get introduced to the program. I try to not focus too much in my classes on teaching like the actual InDesign program, just throw you in there. So if you have a little bit of previous knowledge of interacting with that platform, then I can focus more on the theory, which is why we asked that. And so there's a bunch of resources that are available online if you don't have some of those prereqs. And I think we tend to balance things out to be kind of like, okay, well, this person has maybe a lot of design and didn't have as much editorial, but we think they're strong in some ways. So it's a balancing act. And yes, the answer is yes. You have a good chance. And Scott wants to add.
So I'm just going to add, I was nodding my head about the accounting, actually, not the design. Very few students are good at accounting. And the way we do it is we get you to do a profit and loss statement for your books. And it's a little fill in the blanks Excel file, and you'll learn how to do it. It's really not that complicated. So don't worry about the accounting.
Fantastic. Thank you. Here's a question for the alumni. So a attendant would like to know if it's possible to reach out to you if they have further questions.
Yeah, for sure. I have been reached out by so many people on like Instagram of like I mean, I have like people writing from on like sending me like direct messages on Instagram saying, Hey, I noticed you're an MPub alumni. Can I ask you a question? And I have someone approached to me through LinkedIn, and I have had a conversation with somebody from South Africa wanting to join the MPub program. So yeah, I'm happy to help if I can.
Amazing. If people did want to reach out, would you recommend Instagram as the place to find you, or email?
Yeah, sure. Or I can I don't know how best to go through this, but I'm happy to share my email, and yeah, they can reach out to me through email.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. I think we have the contact information of everybody who registered, so we can send a follow-up email with some links and some documents, and we'll ask Annie and Leena if they're comfortable sharing their email if you have follow-up questions for them. Annie, no pressure.
Please, yeah, feel free to add mine too. I'm not such a celebrity like Leena is. She gets reached out. Everybody's reaching out to her.
Because you've been hiding in Ottawa.
Exactly. I'm too far. The mail can't get here.
I don't know. I'm like, who should I assign these questions to? How is the coursework spread out? Is it 4 in one semester and 5 in the next? The answer to that is kind of.
But also not. I'm going to answer that.
Great.
So it's 4 and 4, and then there's Mauve's class that goes, oh, my finger disappears. So it's more kind of like 5 and 5, or 4.5 and 4.5.
It's 4.5 and 4.5. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the way that the tuition is calculated is based on 4 then 5. So it's calculated as though you're taking 4 courses in the first semester and 5 in the second. But that's sort of not exactly how it works in practice, because in practice you're taking Mauve's design course all year. Lucky. Mauve, while we've got you, there's another question about design here. Is it wise to submit mock design projects, self-learning, to show interest in learning, even if you don't have much experience in design specifically?
Absolutely. Yeah. Anything creative, I would say, put it on there. Crafts, jewelry making, photography, we've seen it all, and it speaks to your creativity, and it's lovely to see.
Amazing. We've got a couple of questions here. I'm jumping around like a total chaos. If your bachelor's degree falls under the minimum of second-class average, but you have 2 years of direct working experience in the industry as an editor, is there a chance that the application would be considered? This is a moment when I wish that our wonderful department manager, Joanne Ray, was with us, because I don't remember what SFU's cutoff GPA is. There is a line under which we cannot admit students, but within that, if it's above SFU's sort of cutoff, we take industry experience very seriously. So there is sort of a line past which we don't have any flexibility. If you, for example, have a degree from an international institution and that your GPA needs to be translated to a Canadian version, we will also take that into account. But we do take, as I said, we take industry experience really seriously. We're interested in people with experience. And so I would say don't let it discourage you from applying. Juan?
Yeah, just to add, it's a little bit reinforcing what you're saying, but for those that are having questions around what would it take to get admitted into the program, I'll say that our process of looking at applications really is not entirely focused on looking at your academics and your previous academic. We really do actually take a fairly balanced approach to trying to look across at the whole person. We end up trying to also balancing the cohort of having a nice mix of people that are clearly strong academic background, but maybe don't have as much industry experience with other people that have a lot of industry experience or have demonstrated sort of skills in other ways that are outside of the academic environment, and that creates a nice sort of balanced cohort. So this is the encouragement of anyone that is interested in the program. If you have a good you can sort of write your statement and explain your reasons for wanting to be a part of the program, explain what you are bringing to the table, and that our process of going through these applications really considers you as a whole person and not just a traditional facet, because what it takes to succeed in the program actually is a little bit of being good at different things, and you don't need to be excellent in all of the categories. You can be really good in one, and you can develop those other skills while you're with.
Yeah, a lot of what we emphasize is teamwork and collaboration. So we try to make sure that you end up with sort of grounding in a variety of vital skills, but also you spend a lot of time learning how to work with a team where you have different skills and you work together to accomplish things. There's a great question here right at the end that I think maybe everybody might have some insight into, which is, could you give some insight into what you look for in applications and personal statements? What stands out to you? And that might be a good chance also to talk a little bit about how, some folks come in really wanting to work in the industry and some folks come in with a little bit more of a research interest. Juan, do you want to start us off with that?
Sure. Again, this is another one where there isn't one answer to this. In fact, actually, when we go through applications, which we do as a committee of actually most of the faculty participate in the process every year. And it's always interesting when we come together how we all identify different strengths of different applications. We don't necessarily have the one thing that we all agree is what makes a strong candidate, and this is where we then end up in conversation talking about the various strengths. I'll say statements that stand out for me, and maybe others can then comment a couple of things that they look for. But for me, having sort of some clarity of purpose of why it is that you're wanting to come and do the program, which doesn't necessarily mean what exactly you want to do, but you have a reason for why this program seems like the right fit for you. And that is a chance to demonstrate that you've thought about sort of who you are and what is it that where you're at sort of in life, the skills that you've developed so far, and what you're looking to learn. And the kind of general directions that you're trying to orient your life in through the program. So that's one thing that I in particular am always kind of reading for in those statements, and that you're able to communicate and kind of present yourself and sell and identify your own strengths and present them clearly in a written form. Those are things that I'm particularly always looking for in those statements.
Yeah. Scott, any thoughts on what stands out to you in a strong personal statement?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to what Juan's just said, that to me, it's about your statement and also about being persuasive. A lot of the work that we do as editors is persuading people that they should be buying this book, or that this thing that we're trying to sell them is going to change their life and it's interesting. And that's a big part of what you do in the book project. And that's what you should be doing with your statement, is trying to convince us that you have really thought about this, that this is the way you want to spend, because it's intense, that you're going to come out of it having learned some things that are going to, send you off in the career in a good way. Like Juan said, you're not necessarily going to know where you're going to be, because probably a lot of you in 20 years from now are going to be doing jobs that don't even exist now. But it's so true. A lot of people come in, I'd say the majority come in thinking that they want to be editors, preferably at Farrar, Straus Giroux, and they end up doing different things, or finding that marketing is actually really fascinating, or production, or probably a lot of them haven't even thought about design, but actually really enjoy the process and learn some really interesting things. So generally, I'd say it's openness to all that kind of thing, and a clear kind of idea of what it is that you're hoping to get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that combination of saying, here's my strengths, here's my passions, here's what I'm excited about, and then still bringing that openness into the program, because there's going to be opportunities that surprise you and things that interest you that you don't necessarily know coming in are going to interest you. And that includes research opportunities. Juan and I are both researchers, so we both do hire research assistants for various projects. We have a background of students successfully applying for master's level SSHRC grants for their project reports and doing a sort of more research intensive project report. We've had a number of students successfully get SSHRC grants for those. For those who don't know, SSHRC is the research funding body for social sciences and humanities research here in Canada. And we do also sometimes have students go on to do their PhDs in related areas. In fact, Juan just had a former MPub student successfully defend her PhD after returning to work with him in the scholarly communications lab, and she's now going on to a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of British Columbia. So people really do take all kinds of paths through the MPub. Mauve, Suzanne, thoughts on a strong application?
Not so much on the application. I was just going to address a couple of questions about what they should do before the application, if that's all right.
Please do, because we've got 3 minutes left.
Okay, it was, volunteer if you can during the summer or the spring semesters, book festivals, literary festivals. Even try and do short internships at publishers if you can. There's always something coming up that you could volunteer for or get a short paid gig on. I think the other question was about what kind of work you should do in the summer. If you can get paid work in any of the areas that are applicable in publishing, great. If not, take a few courses, show your interest in expanding your knowledge in the publishing area.
Yeah, and that doesn't have to be work specifically for a publishing house. That can be work doing copywriting and editing and social media management for a local business. Like there's lots and lots of different ways that the skills involved in publishing can play out in different kinds of jobs. Let's see. Just running through these questions real quick. Professional placements are, in fact, generally paid. In fact, we will not recommend or suggest any unpaid placements. If a student really insists that they want to do one, we won't stop them. But we prioritize matching you with placements that will pay you for your work. Do a lot of students enter the MPub straight out of undergrad, or are there more applicants like Leena who have previous publishing experience? The answer is it's always a mix, and we love having that mix because that's how we get diverse and interesting cohorts, and that becomes a real strength in the program. How long is an average portfolio? Don't make it too long. If it's too long, we won't look at the whole thing.
The same answer you will get in my classes when you ask me about how long any piece of writing that you do for me will be, is that it needs to be as long as it needs to be for you to communicate what you want to communicate, which is my favorite. And I have that practice because I say it in all of my courses for every assignment, every time. There is no, with all of these things, like really the portfolios always look very different. For someone that has, for example, coming from someone who does a lot of research, and all of my portfolio is all pieces of writing of things that I would include in there would be things that I've written that express my ideas related to things that would showcase both my writing abilities, my research skills, or my thinking about publishing. But someone that has done that has more of a design background would include some pieces that would showcase their different design skills and their way of how they approach design or some things that they've done in the past. It really will vary depending on what it is that you're wanting to highlight with that portfolio. And so there is no one format. And so you're hearing this a lot about these applications. There is no one right way of doing them, or not one right past experience that is going to be the thing that gets you in. Really think about the portfolio around what are you wanting to communicate to the committee about what you're bringing to the program. And so if what you're bringing is great writing, then include a good piece of writing that allows you to show that. If what you're bringing is great design, then include some pieces of design. Think that we are a committee that's looking over all of the applications that are coming in. So, putting in like 100-page document is probably not something that we're going to be too inclined to be able to read in detail. But you're trying to strike that that balance? Which again, I know it's a little bit of a wiggle answer, but hopefully you get the sense of how you should approach thinking about it and determining how long it should be yourself.
Amazing.
Hannah, would you recommend too, if people are very interested in podcasting or in other kinds of audio, that they include samples of their work in those areas? Because we always think
100%.
design and writing, right? Those are the
Yep.
two things, but there's lots
Yep.
of visual representations that don't include.
Yeah, absolutely. Including part of the thing, what you can do in your portfolio is include links to external work. So if you want to point us towards websites you've designed or podcasts that you've made or social media sites that you have run, we're really interested in seeing who you are and what excites you and what you're bringing to the table. And so that is what your application should emphasize. We're going to wrap things up now because we want to respect everybody's time, but we will send out a follow-up email that includes a recording of this event if folks want to watch it back, or if folks registered and weren't able to attend in real time. And that email that we'll send out will also include contact information if you want to ask us further questions. We encourage you to reach out with any questions about the program or the application process, because we are happy to help you in any way we can as you work on that application, which, as a reminder, is due February 1st. All right. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you especially to Jewel for running the Q&A for us, and to Annie and Leena for coming and sharing your experience. And of course, to all our attendees, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, all.
Yeah.
Bye.